College football is an entirely different beast from the NFL, but with a larger cult fan base and plenty of fans, I would say it is definitely one of the most popular football products in the world. At the college level, we have seen quarterbacks dominate the competition so entirely that they put the team on their back and carry them to greatness. Today, I wanted to go over my personal top 10 greatest college quarterbacks of all time. I know a lot of people will disagree with this list, but if you're excited, be sure to press that like button. Before he ever touched an NFL field or became the heart and soul of the Tennessee Titans, Steve McNair was straight up embarrassing people at a little school in Mississippi called Alcorn State. And when I say embarrassing, I mean dropping video game numbers on teams that probably still haven't recovered. He showed up at Alcorn after schools like Florida State and Miami recruited him as a defensive back, which, to be fair, McNair probably could have done just fine. But he knew he had an arm, and he wasn't about to be the next great safety who never got a shot to sling it, so he picked a historically black college in the Southwestern Athletic Conference that would actually let him play quarterback, and the rest is basically a football fever dream. From the moment he took the field, he was just on another level. Like, imagine trying to stop a dude who could run like a fullback, throw 60 yards off his back foot, and put up 500 yards of offense like it was just another Saturday. McNair didn't just put Alcorn State on the map, he carved out a damn highway to it. His senior year in 1994 is one of the most ridiculous seasons a college quarterback has ever had, and that's not an exaggeration. He threw for 5,377 yards, rushed for another 904, and accounted for 56 total touchdowns at a small HBCU in the 90s. You know how crazy you have to be for Heisman voters to notice you at a Division I 2A school? McNair finished third in the Heisman voting that year, behind two Power 5 guys, and honestly, that might have been his biggest loss of the season, but the numbers don't even tell the full story. McNair had this calm chaos to his game. He'd roll out, stiff arm two guys, and fire a 40-yard laser across his body like it was warm-ups. And it wasn't just for show. Alcorn was winning games because of him, not in spite of him. He'd carry the whole team on his back like it was nothing. If the defense gave up 45, no problem. McNair would go out and drop 52. By the time he left college, he had 16,823 total yards, which at the time was the most in NCAA history. He basically rewrote what was possible for quarterbacks outside the big name schools, and scouts noticed. The Oilers took him third overall in the 1995 NFL Draft, making him the highest drafted African American quarterback in league history at the time. McNair didn't come from a powerhouse program. He came from a small Mississippi school most people had never heard of, and he turned it into must-watch football. Alcorn State became his stage, and he didn't just perform, he dominated like a man playing against kids. And looking back, that's exactly what it was. Alright, let's talk about Danny Wuerrfel, the golden boy of the mid-90s Florida Gators offense, and maybe the last quarterback who could win a Heisman while looking like your youth pastor. Wuerrfel played for Steve Spurrier, which basically meant he was handed a loaded shotgun and told to go have fun. Spurrier's fun and gun offense was built to humiliate SEC defenses, and Wuerrfel was the guy pulling the trigger. He wasn't the fastest, didn't have a cannon for an arm, but the man threw touchdowns like it was a bodily function. He was just built to run that system. He took over as the full-time starter in 1993, and from that point on, it was air raid season in Gainesville. Over the next 4 years, he turned Ben Hill Griffin Stadium into a touchdown factory. He led Florida to 4 straight SEC championship games, winning one of them in 1996, and threw for over 10,000 yards and 114 touchdowns across his career. If you were a safety in the SEC during the mid-90s, you probably still wake up in cold sweats thinking about Wuerrfel throwing jump balls to Ike Hilliard and Rydell Anthony. But 1996 was the masterpiece. That's when it all came together. Wuerrfel threw for 39 touchdowns, won the Heisman Trophy, and led Florida to its first ever national championship, obliterating Florida State in the Sugar Bowl to get revenge for their regular season loss. He capped it off with 3 touchdown passes in that game, proving once again that you didn't need to run a 4.5 or throw it 80 yards to be great. You just needed to be smart, accurate, and in Steve Spurrier's system. And while his college legacy is untouchable, his NFL career wasn't. He was drafted in the 4th round by the Saints in 1997, and that should have been the first warning sign. The Saints were basically where good quarterbacks went to die back then. Wuerrfel bounced around a bit, Green Bay, Chicago, Washington, and threw a grand total of 12 touchdowns and 22 picks in his NFL career. But here's the thing, nobody really talks about that when they bring up Danny Wuerrfel. Because the guy was a college football legend, he played in an era when the SEC still thought throwing 30 times a game was risky, and he made it look like a damn science experiment. He walked so guys like Joe Burrow could sprint. He didn't make it in the NFL, but he made Florida football what it is today. Also, fun fact, after football, he went into full-time ministry work and helped rebuild communities hit by Hurricane Katrina. So yeah, even if his NFL stat line was rough, the guy still found a way to win, just not on Sundays. Alright, now let's talk about Joe Burrow, aka the smoothest dude to ever throw a football in a pair of white Nike socks. His rise wasn't just a story, it was a damn cinematic arc. We're talking underdog beginnings, a rocket ship of a senior season, and a swagger level that made LSU football feel like an R-rated movie for one glorious year. Burrow started his college career at Ohio State, and for a while, it looked like he'd just be another forgotten depth chart name in Columbus. He spent 3 years riding the bench behind guys like JT Barrett and Dwayne Haskins, and by the time he realized he wasn't going to get a real shot, he transferred to LSU. At the time, that wasn't exactly a sexy move. LSU was known more for handing the ball off 40 times and losing 10-6 than it was for developing quarterbacks. But Burrow wasn't there for the aesthetics. He was there to finally play. His first season at LSU in 2018 was solid. Not amazing, not bad. He threw for just under 3,000 yards and 16 touchdowns. The Tigers went 10-3 and beat UCF in a bowl game, which felt like progress. But nobody saw what was coming next. Then came 2019, and Joe Burrow morphed into a god-tier quarterback overnight. It wasn't just a good season, it was the greatest college football season any quarterback has ever had. Period. He threw for 5,671 yards, 60 touchdowns, and just 6 picks, completed 76.3% of his passes, and absolutely shredded every single team in his path. Texas, torched. Alabama, smoked him. Georgia in the SEC title game, too easy. Oklahoma in the playoff, he dropped 7 touchdowns in 1 half. Clemson in the national title, handled. Joe Burrow didn't just beat teams, he dismantled them with clinical precision and then lit a cigar on their sideline. He won the Heisman Trophy in a landslide and led LSU to a 15-0 season and a national championship, turning Baton Rouge into Mardi Gras for 4 straight months. It was pure chaos, pure dominance, and pure cool. That 2019 LSU team will go down as one of the greatest ever, and Burrow was the face of it all. Calm, cocky, surgical. Unsurprisingly, the Bengals took him first overall in the 2020 NFL draft, and for once, Cincinnati didn't mess it up. Even though the offensive line was made of wet cardboard and he spent half the season getting smashed, he still showed flashes of elite potential. Then, halfway through his rookie year, he tore his ACL and MCL. A brutal hit that ended his season. Most guys would have taken a year and eased back into things. Burrow came back in 2021, fully healed, and immediately took the Bengals to the Super Bowl. Let me repeat that. The Bengals in the Super Bowl with Joe Burrow at quarterback. That alone should be enough to get a statue built outside Paul Brown Stadium. He threw for over 4,600 yards, 34 touchdowns, and gave Cincinnati their first real hope in decades, and he didn't do it with a super team. He did it with grit, timing, and a whole lot of help from Jamar Chase. 2022 was more of the same. Burrow put up another 4,400 yard, 35 touchdown season, took the Bengals back to the AFC Championship, and went toe-to-toe with Mahomes again. He beat him 3 times before finally losing that one, and even that game could have gone either way. People were already calling it the new Brady versus Manning, and for once, the Bengals were on the good side of the comparison. Alright, now let's talk about Deshaun Watson, one of the most electrifying quarterbacks of the last decade, and also one of the most controversial. His story is the ultimate two sides of the coin situation. On one side, you've got a guy who torched Alabama twice on the biggest stage, racked up stats in the NFL like it was nothing, and looked like a surefire future MVP. On the other side, you've got lawsuits, lots of them, and a career that's been in limbo ever since. He arrived at Clemson in 2014, and even as a true freshman, you could tell something was different. He wasn't just another mobile QB, he had poise, touch, and the kind of football IQ that made it feel like he was 3 steps ahead of the defense. He split time that first year, but still managed to throw 14 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions, and the Tigers knew they had something special. Unfortunately, injuries cut that season short, a broken hand, then a torn ACL in practice. But even in limited action, Watson had already made his case. Then came 2015, and that's when the legend really started. He exploded for 4,109 passing yards, 35 touchdowns, and added another 1,105 yards and 12 touchdowns on the ground. He became the first player in college football history to throw for over 4,000 yards and rush for over 1,000 in the same season. Clemson went 14-0, made it to the national championship game, and went toe-to-toe with Alabama in an all-time classic. Watson threw for 405 yards, ran for another 73, and scored 4 total touchdowns. He gave Nick Saban everything he could handle, and then some, and if Clemson's defense had gotten one more stop, he'd have walked off with a ring right then and there. But he wasn't done. 2016 was revenge season. Watson came back with one mission: finish the job. He threw for 4,593 yards, 41 touchdowns, and led Clemson back to the national championship game, again against Alabama, and this time he finished the story. Down by 3, 6 seconds left, ball at the 2-yard line, Watson rolls right and hits Hunter Renfrow for the walk-off touchdown. It was poetry. Clemson wins 35-31, and Watson delivers the school's first national title since 1981. He was named Offensive MVP of the game, and if you watched it live, you knew you were witnessing greatness. By the time he left Clemson, Deshaun Watson had racked up over 10,000 passing yards, 116 total touchdowns, 2 national title appearances, 1 championship, and a permanent place in college football history. And maybe the most impressive part? He never cracked under pressure. The bigger the moment, the calmer he got. You could throw the house at him, and he'd still deliver a strike while blinking slower than your microwave clock. Let's talk about Matt Leinart, the poster boy of mid-2000s USC football, and the guy who made playing quarterback in college look like a Hollywood script because, well, he was literally living in one. He had the look, the arm, the trophies, and a campus that basically treated him like a rock star in shoulder pads. The NFL didn't pan out, but his college career, that was pure dominance. Leinart took over the reins at USC in 2003, replacing Carson Palmer, and there were some questions, not about talent, but about whether he could actually handle the pressure of following a Heisman winner at a program that was suddenly loaded and expected to win everything. Turns out he wasn't just ready, he was about to help build a dynasty. In his first year as a starter, he threw for 3,556 yards and 38 touchdowns, led USC to a 12-1 record, and helped them win a share of the national title, back when we were still dealing with the absurd BCS system. He finished 6th in Heisman voting, but the Trojans weren't done. 2004 was the year everything came together. Leinart was in full control, calm, confident, and precise. He threw for 3,322 yards, 33 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. USC went 13-0, destroyed Oklahoma in the national title game, a 55-19 embarrassment that was over before halftime, and Leinart threw 5 touchdowns in that game alone. He won the Heisman Trophy, the Walter Camp Award, and the Manning Award, and he did it all while looking like he just walked off the set of a teen drama. It was effortless. Then came 2005, and if you were expecting a drop-off, you clearly didn't watch that USC team. Leinart returned for his senior year when he could have gone pro, which in hindsight might have been a financial L, but a legendary college football flex. He led USC to another 12-0 regular season, threw for 3,815 yards and 28 touchdowns, and formed arguably the greatest backfield in college football history, alongside Reggie Bush and Lendale White. It all led to the 2006 Rose Bowl, the national championship game against Vince Young and Texas, in what might be the greatest college football game ever played. Leinart threw for 365 yards, completed 73% of his passes, and led USC on a late go-ahead drive. But then Vince Young happened, and just like that, USC's 34-game win streak and shot at a 3rd straight title were gone. Still, that didn't erase what Leinart had done. 37-2 as a starter, 2 national titles, 1 shared, 1 outright, 1 Heisman, and a permanent seat at the table of college football royalty. Leinart's college legacy is all time. He didn't have the biggest arm, he didn't run a 4.4, but the dude just won. He was surgical in the pocket, clutch in big games, and absolutely fearless when it mattered. He had the full package, the talent, the accolades, the rings, and a run of dominance that basically made USC the center of the college football universe for 3 straight years. He might be remembered now as a classic college QB who flamed out in the pros, but that's revisionist history. In the college football world, Matt Leinart was that dude, and in the early 2000s, there was nobody smoother. Alright, let's talk about Case Keenum, the most statistically ridiculous quarterback in college football history, and the man who made Houston, yes, Houston, the epicenter of an all-you-can-eat touchdown buffet. Keenum didn't play in the SEC, he didn't have 5-star receivers, but what he did have was a cannon arm, a no-huddle offense, and absolutely zero interest in punting. He showed up at Houston in 2006 and redshirted that first year, which in hindsight was a blessing for college football defenses everywhere. But once he hit the field in 2007, it was open season. He split time at first, but by the end of the year, he was the guy. And from there, it was over. In 2008, he blew up. We're talking 5,020 passing yards, 44 touchdowns, and 7 games with over 400 yards. This wasn't your average air raid stuff. Keenum was running an offense that felt like a cheat code. The Cougars were chucking it every down, spreading defenses out, and just letting Keenum play backyard football. He wasn't just stat padding in garbage time either. He was consistently torching teams for 4 quarters. Then came 2009, and somehow he got even better. He threw for a casual 5,671 yards and 44 more touchdowns, leading Houston to a 10-win season and putting them back on the national map. He was like a walking video game. One week he'd throw for 540 yards, the next he'd casually drop 6 touchdowns on a conference rival like he was late for dinner. Every box score was a math problem, but right as he was peaking, disaster struck. In 2010, Keenum tore his ACL just 3 games into the season while trying to make a tackle after a pick, which by the way is the most football guy way possible to get hurt. Most quarterbacks would have faded into obscurity, not Keenum. Thanks to a medical redshirt, he came back in 2011 for a 6th season, and that's when he broke everything. In his final year, he threw for 5,631 yards, 48 touchdowns, and only 5 interceptions. Houston went 13-1, finished the season ranked, and Keenum went full supernova. By the time he was done, he had racked up a college football record 19,217 passing yards and 155 touchdown passes. Records that still haven't been touched, and probably won't be unless someone plays with both an Xbox controller and a 7-year eligibility plan. He never got Heisman love, partly because he played in Conference USA, partly because voters are weird about numbers that look like someone sat on a keyboard. But make no mistake, Case Keenum is one of the most productive quarterbacks to ever play the game. Was it the air raid? Sure. Did he throw the ball 50 times a game? Absolutely, but you still have to execute. And Keenum did it better than anyone for 6 straight years. He may not have played for Alabama or won a national title, but if we're talking pure college football legend, Case Keenum belongs on the damn Mount Rushmore of stats. Let's talk about Baker Mayfield, the walk-on quarterback who pissed off just about every fan base in college football, and also won a Heisman, planted a flag at midfield, and rewrote Oklahoma's record books while talking trash the entire time. Baker's college career wasn't just great, it was chaotic, entertaining, and somehow both underdog and villain at the same time. It all started at Texas Tech in 2013, where Baker walked on as a true freshman and ended up starting week 1. Not because of injuries, not because of scholarship drama, just because he was that dude. He threw for over 400 yards in his debut, but a knee injury midway through the season derailed everything. And when Tech didn't offer him a scholarship, he dipped out. Because of course he did. He transferred to Oklahoma, had to sit out a year due to NCAA rules, back when they still pretended to care about that, and then took over in 2015, and immediately lit the Big 12 on fire. He threw for 3,700 yards, 36 touchdowns, and led the Sooners to the college football playoff. Suddenly, this former walk-on was one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and he played like every game was personal, but Baker wasn't done. 2016 was even better. He put up 3,965 yards, 40 touchdowns, and completed 70% of his passes. The Sooners went 11-2, but the playoff committee left them out, and Baker took that as an insult, which, to be fair, he took everything as an insult. He was fiery, emotional, and completely unapologetic. Whether he was jawing at defenders, yelling at at fans, or planting the OU flag at midfield in Columbus after beating Ohio State, Baker was always in the middle of something, and that's what made him must-watch TV. Then came 2017, and it was Baker Mayfield's magnum opus. He threw for 4,627 yards, 43 touchdowns, and just 6 picks, completed 70.5% of his passes, and ran the Sooners offense like a surgeon with a grudge. He won the Heisman Trophy in a landslide, became the first walk-on quarterback to ever win the award, and led Oklahoma to another college football playoff appearance. In the Rose Bowl semifinal against Georgia, Baker was electric. 287 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, and a touchdown reception for good measure. It was one of the most thrilling games in CFP history, but Oklahoma lost in double overtime. Still, the legacy was already cemented. Baker didn't win a national championship, but he changed the way people viewed the quarterback position, especially walk-ons. He made swagger and chip-on-the-shoulder energy a legitimate part of the playbook. By the time he left Norman, he had thrown for 14,607 yards, 131 touchdowns, and only 30 interceptions. He left with the FBS record for passing efficiency at the time and 3 straight Big 12 titles. More importantly, he left Oklahoma with an identity and a legacy as one of the most iconic players the program's ever had. Baker wasn't perfect. He had his run-ins, his antics, his moments where the emotion spilled over, but he backed it up every time he stepped on the field. He was brash, brilliant, and completely unfiltered, and college football was way more fun with him in it. Let's talk about Vince Young, the walking cheat code who didn't just play quarterback, he redefined it. Vince Young's college career at Texas wasn't just legendary, it was mythical. The man moved like a gazelle, threw like a cannon with training wheels, and somehow always found a way to win even if it looked like the game was slipping away. And in the biggest moment of his life, under the brightest lights, he delivered the single greatest performance in college football history. No debate. Young showed up in Austin in 2002, redshirted his freshman year, and then slowly took the job over in 2003. At first, he was raw, a little erratic, still figuring it out, but you could see it. The arm, the legs, the stride. The man looked like he was gliding across the field. He made 20-yard gains look like casual jogs. By 2004, Texas had officially handed him the keys, and that's when the Vince Young experience went full throttle. In 2004, he threw for 1,849 yards, rushed for another 1,079, and scored 25 total touchdowns, leading Texas to an 11-1 record and a last-second win over Michigan in the Rose Bowl, a game where he torched the Wolverines for 372 total yards and 5 touchdowns. It was the preview of what was coming. Vince wasn't just a runner who could throw, he was something else entirely, a 6 feet 5 inches alien who made everyone else on the field look like they were stuck in slow motion. Then came 2005, the year. The Texas Longhorns went 13-0, and Vince Young was the reason. He threw for 3,036 yards, rushed for 1,050, and scored 38 total touchdowns. He didn't win the Heisman, Reggie Bush did before having it Thanos snapped. But it didn't matter. Everyone knew who the best player in the country was. Vince Young was uncoverable. Defenses would spy him, blitz him, drop 8 in coverage, and it didn't matter. He'd roll out, take off, and pick up 25 like he was walking his dog. The 2006 Rose Bowl, the national title game against USC, was the greatest college football game ever played, and Vince Young owned it. On a field that had Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, Lendale White, Dwayne Jarrett, and every other future NFL player you could think of, Vince was the most dominant presence by miles. He threw for 267 yards, rushed for 200, and scored 3 rushing touchdowns, including the iconic game winner on 4th and 5 with 19 seconds left. The play itself is burned into the soul of college football. He drops back, nothing's there, takes off around the edge, and glides into the end zone like a ghost. No panic, no hesitation, just pure inevitability. USC's 34-game win streak, gone. Pete Carroll's dynasty, dismantled. Texas wins 41-38, and Vince Young walks off into college football immortality. By the time he left Texas, Vince had racked up 6,040 passing yards, 3,127 rushing yards, and 81 total touchdowns. But his stats don't tell the story. What made him special was how he played, how calm he looked when the game was falling apart, how he always had another gear, remember how every time you thought Texas was in trouble, Vince reminded you, nah, I got this. He finished with a career record of 30-2 as a starter, including 20 straight wins to close it out. He didn't just bring Texas a national championship, he made them cool. For a brief moment, Vince Young turned the Texas Longhorns into the center of the football universe. There are a lot of great college QBs, a lot of winners, a lot of guys with rings, Heismans, and gaudy numbers. But there's only one Vince Young, and if you saw him in 2005, you'll never forget it. Let's talk about Tommie Frazier, the quarterback who ran the option like it was a religion and turned Nebraska football into a damn steamroller during the mid-90s. If Vince Young was a cheat code, Tommie Frazier was the original glitch in the system. A cold-blooded, bone-breaking, don't blink or you'll miss it field general who made defenders question why they even played the sport. Frazier didn't put up video game passing numbers. He wasn't throwing for 400 yards or slinging 40-yard lasers downfield. What he did do was win violently. You want to talk about dominance? Frazier went 33-3 as a starter, won back-to-back national championships, and ran Nebraska's offense like a military operation powered by rage and corn-fed linemen. He arrived in Lincoln in 1992 and took over the starting job as a true freshman, which is rare enough at Nebraska, let alone at quarterback in Tom Osborne's old-school grind-you-into-the-dirt triple option. But Frazier didn't flinch. Even as a teenager, the guy had ice in his veins. He went 3-2 as a starter that year, showed flashes, and got Nebraska fans buzzing. Then came 1993, and that's when he really took over. He led Nebraska to an undefeated regular season and a trip to the Orange Bowl to face Florida State for the national title. Nebraska lost a heartbreaker on a last-second missed field goal, but Frazier held his own against Charlie Ward and a loaded FSU squad. It was clear he wasn't just good, he was about to own college football. 1994 was a weird one. Frazier started the season on fire, but then a blood clot in his leg sidelined him for most of the year. Most guys would have been done. Not Frazier. He missed 8 games, came back in the national title game, cold, off the bench, and still led a game-winning drive against Miami. Nebraska won the championship, and Frazier's legend got even bigger. The dude literally came off blood clot rehab to win a national title. What? But then came 1995, the most violent, soul-crushing season of dominance maybe ever. Frazier was healthy, pissed off, and playing behind one of the greatest offensive lines in college football history. Nebraska didn't just win that year. They committed weekly crimes. They beat teams by an average of 39 points. They hung 77 on Arizona State. They destroyed Colorado. And in the Fiesta Bowl, the national championship game against Florida, they dropped 62 points and made Steve Spurrier's Gators look like a high school JV squad. Frazier's performance in that game is the stuff of myth. He ran for 199 yards, including one of the greatest plays in college football history, a 75-yard touchdown where he broke like 7 tackles, dragged half the state of Florida on his back, and somehow kept running like he was made of steel. You can't coach that. You can't even describe it. It was pure, unstoppable will. He finished his career with 3,521 passing yards, 2,263 rushing yards, and 79 total touchdowns. But again, the numbers don't tell the story. What made Tommie Frazier special was the control, the calm, and the devastation. He didn't just win games, he ended them. He made defenses give up. He made opposing coaches look down the sideline like, well, it was nice being ranked. He never won the Heisman, which, let's be honest, is criminal, but he was named MVP of 3 straight national championship games, which is something no one else has ever done. He's the only quarterback to go undefeated as a starter in back-to-back title-winning seasons, and to this day, when people talk about the greatest winners in college football history, his name is always in that conversation. Tommie Frazier didn't need flashy numbers, he didn't need a big market, he just needed the football, and once he had it, your team was in deep trouble. Let's talk about Tim Tebow, the college football Terminator sent from Gainesville to bless your Saturdays with stiff arms, scripture, and emotional sideline speeches that somehow always made you want to run through a brick wall. Tebow didn't just play football, he played inspirational football, the kind where every first down came with a roar, every touchdown came with a jump pass or a truck stick, and every post-game interview came with a heartfelt sermon. And for 4 straight years, he was the absolute center of the college football universe. He showed up at Florida Florida in 2006 as the most hyped high school quarterback in the country. The 5-star with a linebacker's body, a quarterback's mind, and a throwing motion that looked like he was launching a watermelon. Urban Meyer already had Chris Leak at the helm, but Tebow carved out a role as the designated wrecking ball. He barely threw the ball that year, just 33 attempts, but ran for 469 yards and 8 touchdowns in short yardage and red zone packages. He was Florida's sledgehammer, and when they won the national championship that season, he walked away with a ring before most quarterbacks even take their first snap. But it was 2007 when Tebow truly became the guy. With Leak gone, the offense was his, and what followed was one of the most ridiculous statistical seasons in college football history. He threw for 3,286 yards and 32 touchdowns, rushed for another 895 yards and 23 touchdowns, and became the first player in NCAA history to throw for 30 and run for 30-20 in the same season. He won the Heisman Trophy, becoming the first sophomore ever to take home the award, and he didn't do it playing in a gimmick offense against nobodies. He was bullying SEC defenses and making it look like backyard football. The next year, 2008, was his masterpiece. The Gators started 3-1 and suffered a brutal upset loss to Ole Miss. And that's when Tebow gave the speech. You know the one, the teary-eyed, stone-faced, no one's gonna work harder monologue that Urban Meyer probably plays on a loop when he needs motivation. Florida never lost another game. They absolutely steamrolled the rest of the schedule, including a 30-point win over LSU, a 39-point beatdown of Georgia, and a victory over Alabama in the SEC championship. Tebow capped it off by beating Oklahoma 24-14 in the national championship game, securing Florida's second title in 3 years. That season, he threw for nearly 2,800 yards, added over 670 on the ground, and accounted for 51 total touchdowns. He wasn't just the best player, he was the engine, the heart, and the spiritual lightning rod of a championship team. In 2009, he came back for his senior season, and because of course he did, and once again put up monster numbers, even if it didn't reach the absurdity of his previous years. He threw for over 2,800 yards, rushed for nearly 1,000 more, and scored 35 total touchdowns. Florida went undefeated in the regular season, but ran into an Alabama buzzsaw in the SEC title game. Tebow cried on the sideline, and whether you thought it was corny or courageous, there was no denying he cared more than anyone else on the field. He finished his career with a dominant win in the Sugar Bowl, dismantling Cincinnati and reminding everyone one last time who he was. By the time he walked out of Gainesville for the last time, Tim Tebow had changed the definition of college quarterbacking. He wasn't the prettiest passer, and he sure as hell wasn't conventional, but he finished his career with 9,286 passing yards, 88 passing touchdowns, 2,947 rushing yards, and 57 rushing scores. He won 2 national championships, a Heisman, and the respect of every coach and player who tried to stop him and couldn't. Tebow was a force of nature, a power back disguised as a quarterback, a preacher disguised as a competitor, and a leader who made Florida football feel like something bigger than just wins and losses. Love him or hate him, college football in the 2000s was Tim Tebow, and honestly, it hasn't been the same since. Those are the top 10 greatest college football quarterbacks of all time. I know a lot of people are going to disagree, so let me know your list in the comments down below. Subscribe if you like football videos because we post them often and are trying to hit 15,000 subscribers.